Completing the square. Another method for solving a quadratic is completing the square, and you have to follow these simple steps. Okay, the first step, you rearrange the equation that you're given into the standard format of a quadratic. So that's ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So that's easy enough. The next step is to check to make sure that a here is 1. If a is 2, if it's 2x squared, you divide everything by 2 so that a becomes 1. If a is 3x squared, divide everything by 3 so that a is 1. Okay, so you make sure that a equals 1. Now this part is where it's not very obvious, but you will understand better when you see an example. So you're going to write out a squared bracket, and the number that goes in the bracket is always half of b. So if b is 10, the number that you'll put in your squared bracket will be 5. If b is minus 6, the number that goes in your squared bracket will be half of minus 6, which is minus 3. Okay, so you'll see that better in an example. And finally, you're going to multiply out your brackets, and again you'll see in the example what I mean by that, and then compare what you've got to your original equation you were given. And then you decide, what do I have to add or what do I have to subtract to make them the same? Okay, and hence complete the square. So let's have a look at an example. Express x squared minus 6x minus 7 equals 0 as a completed square and solve it. Okay, so we're going to find the answer for x. First, we check that a is equal to 1. Yes, it is. There's no number before the x squared, so a is equal to 1. And the number that's going to go in our squared bracket will be minus 3, because it's minus 3 is half of minus 6. So let's write down our squared bracket. There we are, x minus 3 squared. Now we know from our other work that x minus 3 squared means x minus 3 multiplied by x minus 3. And then we do the usual, multiply out the brackets. X times x is x squared. X times minus 3 is minus 3x. Minus 3 times x is minus 3x. And minus 3 times minus 3 is plus 9. So when we put our two minus 3x's together, it makes minus 6x. Now at this point, we're going to compare it with our original equation. X squared minus 6x, 9, and minus 7. So somehow we've got to go from 9 to minus 7. How do we get from plus 9 to minus 7? Well, that's easy. We subtract 16, because 9 minus 16 is minus 7. So to complete the square, we've got x minus 3 squared minus 16. That's how we've completed our square. Okay, now it's time to solve. So let's write down x minus 3 squared minus 16. The first thing we do is to add 16 to both sides of the equation. So we move the 16 over. So we've got x minus 3 squared equals 16. Then we find the square root of both sides. Now the square root of a square, they're cancelled out. So you're just left with x minus 3. The square root and a square cancel each other out. And on this side, on the right side, you're left with the square root of 16. So x minus 3 equals the square root of 16. Now the square root of 16 can be plus 4 or it can be minus 4. Because 4 times 4 is 16 and minus 4 times minus 4 is 16. So we've got two answers here. So we can say that x minus 3 equals 4 or x minus 3 equals minus 4. So if we add 3 to both sides of the equation here, x will equal 7. And if we add 3 to both sides of the equations here, x is equal to 1. And hence we've solved the equation. X is 7 or x is minus 1. Now pause.